100%. Listening to the answers, I think I asked a very fully loaded question, and as such, we received fully loaded answers. But basically, in just leading to the next question, there was a theme within all of the answers that I picked up, which was related to empowering of previously disadvantaged individuals in the form of companies, BEE. And so looking at all of that now, we have a situation where the construction mafia, whether they go by the name of Amadela Ngokubona, in some instances they call themselves Business Forum, they go by many names. I think it just depends on the region. But I think that we can all agree that this has become sort of like not a rare occurrence, but a day-to-day occurrence where there will be a construction will start on site, and then a couple of days later the forum will come looking for subcontracting work. And now my question is, how do we deal with this as the construction industry? Because it seems like the government has sort of let it or put it into the hands of the construction sector experts and participants to deal with. How do we deal with this? And how do we sort of like formalize this subcontracting thing in order for the sector to continue functioning properly? Because there's a lot of disturbance which then impacts on the work that needs to be done. It impacts on the program, it impacts on the spending, and sometimes people get hurt. And if maybe I can just bring in a background to this question to just round it off. Previously, people have not gotten the same opportunities in different sectors of the economy, including construction. And so now some of the reasoning behind the disturbances in the work is that since the government is not willing to assist the SMMEs are taking the initiative upon themselves. So how do we then, as the construction sector, find a solution to move forward in order for the industry to continue to grow and not be in a position where the work cannot carry on site?
Yeah, sorry about that. Bonke, yeah, I'm sure you've heard the question, and now you know why I wanted you to be part of this one.
Yeah, I'm on the firing line. Yeah, Sibani, I mean, excellent question once again. And look, I need to time myself now, not because of the appointment there. I can always be 5 minutes late there, but so that I don't take up too much time here, not because I'm rushing somewhere else. And I mean, I think I know why Tammy asked me to take this question first, because I was on ENCA last year with Mpondomise when this construction mafia conversation flared up. And one of my observation is that I've seen what you alluded to, Sibani, where clients make it the contractor's problem or the consultant's problem. And I don't think it should be handled that way. It's all our problem. We have a societal problem of marginalization, of economic exclusion, of discrimination, and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, there are opportunists out there who are taking advantage of the revision to the Triple PFA Act, which was promulgated in April 2017, which, if I'm not mistaken, which brought about the so-called term of 30% set aside. The 30% set aside was never meant to create conditions under which people can masquerade as legitimate business people, contractors, and come to site and demand an upfront 30% participation or payment. Yes, participation, that's what it was meant to do. But I think the act, in my view, with the benefit of hindsight, and that's nothing wrong with it, all regulation, all acts are not perfect. They need to be stress tested. And this act is being stress tested and it's failing the stress test. So let's not check out and say, maybe we shouldn't have done that. I think that's the right thing to do, but I don't think it went far enough in terms of being prescriptive and explicit, at least providing a framework in some kind of way that guides how that is envisaged to roll out. There's specific wording in that document that says that leaves it too much to the discretion of the client department. I feel the client department needs to do some risk mitigation work way up front in terms of, to some extent, engaging the beneficiary community, identifying the lay of the land in that specific ward or area, what is really there, because even if there is a set aside and it works well, you're going to have a situation like it happened in Mpumalanga not recently, people complaining that no, this project is not for your ward, it's for our ward. So people from that ward can't come and participate in this project. It leads to all kind of conflict. And it's not an easy thing to solve because of the level of need and desperation out there. People are hungry for opportunities. People want to access opportunities. So any project that comes cannot be able to absorb everybody. But I think clients have a role to play here by doing stakeholder engagement way before the project is ready to even go out to tender, public participation, including ward councillors who unfortunately sometimes have self-interest and a vested interest in terms of a political agenda. Everyone always has an agenda of some sort or the other, whether good or bad. So I think that is part of the problem. I think also the engagement, and now I'm looking at ourselves as the SACP-CMP, the engagement of construction mentors as well as part of that process, because these opportunities, this 30% aside, was that it was meant to create an opportunity where the emerging sector is at least guaranteed some form of participation. It's not up to whether the contractor feels like it or not, but they are compelled to do it in terms of public sector procurement for infrastructure services in accordance with the revised PPFA of April 2017, bringing the notion of set-asides for youth, military veterans, and all those criteria. It's all in that document. And I think it's being abused. And that's why my colleague, Webster Mfebe, the CEO of SAFSEC, went to far as say, we need to activate the POCA Act, the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, because some of these things are now organized crime syndicates being taken advantage of by those people rather than legitimate people who want to have a legitimate economic interest and need to be given the opportunity and support to perform and thrive and grow in those through those opportunities, infrastructure opportunities, so that we don't have a missed opportunity like we did with the 2010 World Cup bid, where we have no legacy in terms of the developmental impact of that expenditure to prepare to host the 2010 Soccer World Cup. Sorry, Tammy, for the long answer again, but I'll stay for another 5 minutes, colleagues. Bear with me.
Thanks, Bonke. That was I'm sure that was mouthful, and I can see Sibani is smiling and nodding quite a few times, so he must agree with me, in a few of the things you said. Now I'm gonna give you the next bite to this one. How do we as an industry deal with this new phenomenon called the construction mafia? Ndawo.
Thanks, it's a very complex question on its own, this one, and I think we need to look at it broadly. I like the way Ubonakala Shonga, in a sense. The challenge that we're facing, for me, bringing the industry for years, checking what is the cause of this. It's the economic challenges that we're facing. I think our country has not been growing according in line with the population growth. You've got a 1.5% year in, year out, whereas you've got a population that has been growing 2% and above. You've got Zimbabweans and other Africans that are coming with legitimate issues running to their countries. And in line with that, we are coming from 2008 in terms of recession, all those kind of things. So in terms of now your macro and microeconomics, construction is very cyclical by nature, as what Ubonakala is saying, is very cyclical. 2010 was a boom, now we're on the down spiral, we know that, and it's going to take a while. So the national treasury are supposed to work to what Ubonakala is saying in terms of stakeholders. When the planning commission that is led by, I think it was led by Trevor Manuel, I don't know now who's leading that in terms of national development plan. The SACP, your your size, all this, they're supposed to form part and parcel of this in terms of saying, how do we move South Africa forward? Because if we are ESCOM, we are running a project, I'm staying in Imekuku's 5 kilometers away, I have my standard 8. And I see all these people that are coming outside with all these fences, and I'm hungry. What am I going to do? Yes, there are construction mafias, but these guys are legitimate. A similar example, for instance, we're doing a pipe at the road report. Unfortunately, Randwater put out a similar strategy in terms of this stakeholder engagement. When you sit down with people, these guys who are legitimate in terms of they're hungry, they've got families. You've got an economy that is not growing. You've got a labor market that, the semi-skilled are competing against the foreigners in terms of this. And, in construction, you always prefer, the cheapest. So in terms of that stakeholder engagement, especially from this organization like SACP, the government's supposed to make sure that your national treasure, your what you call IDT, don't leave this organization on the sides. Because by the time it goes to the client, your Rand Water ESCOM, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Last year we had a briefing where we had more than 300 contractors for only 2 projects. And when I checked, it was both strong and emerging and young contractors. There's one thing, all of these guys, most of them have not had a job in the last 18 months. That tells you the challenges of the economy. So in terms of this, it's a very, very complex question, but as well, we need to make sure to what Webster Mfebe said. I think I was listening to Classic FM. The issue of rule of law as well needs to come in. I think there are issues where we find that as well, we tend to be complacent when it comes to the rule of law. You can't allow people to come and ban, but it comes back to what you're saying, Simelane, from the onset, before the project starts, there's a stakeholder management strategy, identifying, let's say this is Simelane township or whatever, what are the challenges of that township? I think we're doing that. What is the rate of unemployment in terms of that? You need to get a data in terms of that. Who are the key people? And you go back to the basics in terms of your project steering committee or your program steering committee, so that you are able to report back. So we've stopped these things. I see you raise a hand.
No, I'm waving to someone. Sorry.
Okay. So we've stopped these things, but the key thing, it goes back to what you said. Your stakeholder engagement strategy needs to be formed part and parcel of all these projects from the onset, so that you're able to eliminate all these problems. Because some of the communities that we work with, from the onset, once the people are involved, you tend to have minimal challenges. It becomes just your issues of a salary increase. But in terms of disruption, they tend to be minimal. Obviously, where there are elements of criminality, we tend to call the police and the community act. But I think the key thing is your economy needs to be vibrant and active. Because if your economy is not vibrant, as you're saying today, they were discussing to bring in a private sector, we are not going to make any difference. And unfortunately, construction, as Risimati said, it's one of the easiest industries to run that I can bring in my shovel and everything, because at least you're hungry, but you need to address. So it's a government issue that needs to talk to economic policies, both macro and micro level, so that it can cascade down. 2010 was beautiful. Our people were working with all the challenges that we know, but there was less disruption. The issues were about what salaries, and obviously your big guys crossing the government in terms of all these rates, whatever. But people were active, because if your people are active in the economy, at least you're able to deal with societal issues. But slowly you start formalizing it, because your SACP now, your ex and others are starting to reaching out, but don't exclude that. You've got a situation where teachers are in charge of infrastructure now, police are in charge of infrastructure. Therefore, people like you, Tami, Sibani, were spectators now, and you ask the same thing. But how come a simple project that's supposed to take 2 years, it takes 6 years, and it's no longer benefiting the communities? Right now, you've got pumps that are not even working in some of the municipalities. We still have an opportunity. Our municipalities are failing dismally, but it's an opportunity for us to address this through by regulation and making sure there's compliance. So that is my 2 cents that I can add on that, that these are economic issues that talks investment. Government is talking investment. Who's going to invest if people are banning infrastructure? You're not going to do that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I agree. Bonke, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. And
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Guys, thanks. I'm sorry I have to leave, but thank you very much. I'll catch your response, Risimati. Please don't take it personally, man. Cheers.
No, it's fine. It's okay. Don't worry. We'll connect.
Okay. So Risimati, it's your turn. I mean, the question remains: how, as the industry, do we deal with this new phenomenon called construction mafia? Because as Ndawo said, it impacts not just the industry, it impacts the economy, and as a result, we're not gonna go forward as a country. So somehow it needs to be dealt with.
You know, one thing that I want to add, I think the two speakers have said a mouthful. They've touched base on 2010 as they were actually giving their responses. I think early this year, you know, SAFSEC, they did produce some article, you know, in this whole construction mafia, like benchmarking with 2010 up until where we are now. And some of their findings, if I remember well, I stand to be corrected with that. There's actually on the material index of in the construction sector, you know, it had dropped by almost 70%, you know, while the share in the construction space has actually gone up to 110% and above. So that goes to show you that, you know, while the system we're operating in is so open, it's an open system, there's a lot of new entrants into the market, you know, and I think Sandra was also crying. That is, companies like the old BHO, you know, they will get delayed in project that will end up costing the client up to like 40 million. You know, Sandra is crying as well with some of those big projects, because when these construction mafias come in, the standing times hit on the client, you know, and it actually affects the time and cost of that particular project. But just to shorten the distance and go straight to what I think could be some of the solutions, you know, in the past, you know, I work for Joburg Water, City of Joburg. In the past, you know, there used to be what we call the municipal courts, you know. The municipal courts, they had so much power to actually prosecute, you know, cases that are happening in the local level that don't need to go and wait up to your high court, you know. And those, they used to enforce bylaws, you know, non-compliance and those kind of things. So when all these, some of the metros like City of Joburg, when you have the Northern MSC, Eastern and Western and all the likes, when they were combined, some of these fell off the system, and there's just too much lawlessness. You know, you get people who are construction mafias, they group themselves, but nobody can actually hold them to they cannot even be punished. By the time that case time stands in court, it's after 2 years. You know, and sometimes as the clients, you know, you might not even have the resources. You know, you cannot wait for 2 years to try and prosecute somebody who's trying to stop a project for 10 million. It will cost you more to get to that. And that's where service providers like the clients or project sponsors, they end up bending backwards, you know, in this syndicates, because this is also politically driven. You know, you do end up bending backwards, the client end up bending backwards to try and accommodate these, because you also want to make a bit of profit from there. So I think one of the things that should be looked at, I think, in this country is revisiting some of the old ways that were actually efficient. You know, how do you then reintroduce some of these municipal courts, you know, to handle some of these minor issues and prosecute such people, you know, because the only way we can win in some of these is bylaw enforcement. How do you enforce the bylaws? How do you make sure that in these local communities, people go as far as registering false addresses to participate in that economic space, because it is understood out there that, you see, the construction sector is one of the industries that can actually absorb a lot of people, you know, from unskilled, you know, semi-skilled and so forth. But because of these disruptions, you know, projects that should be happening within 6-8 months, like what my colleague has said from Rainwater, projects will end up taking much more longer than they are planned for, and these, at the end of the day, it affects the project scope, the cost and schedule, and this hit on the client, So in my view, revisiting some of those municipal codes, where can we prosecute some of these, not to wait up to that high level, and I think it can actually yield some other better results in the construction sector, specifically in the local government.